The story in the Knoxville paper a couple days ago is remarkable. It is by Jamie Satterfield and comes from the USA Today network. She is a writer at the Knoxville News Sentinel, very experienced reporter, probably in her mid 50s, has been in the trade for a very long time, and she's writing a story about the men who worked as contractors for TVA in the 2008 Kingston coal slurry disaster. That was a disaster of a dam breaking and a mountain of mud sloshing across a neighborhood in a $1 billion mess that has cost the lives not of people who were living there at the time, but cost the lives of at least 17 workers who were involved in the cleanup of that of that site in Tennessee. And the story that she writes tells about many others who are dying from the breathing of this very poisonous ash that comes from the burning of coal. Now, to find out more about coal fly ash, we're talking to a geoscientist named Marvin Herndon, Dr. J. Marvin Herndon. He is who does not take federal money, and that may be why he is such a you might say such a dissenter in the field of science in probably many areas. The one in which I know him the best is the question of this dangerous product, that being coal fly ash, that is used, as he reports in scientific papers, being used in the aerosol geoengineering program that is in evidence even today here over Chattanooga. We are seeing that today. Dr. Herndon, what is Jamie Satterfield's story about in the Tennessee press? What's a summary of her findings in that report?
Well, first let me give you a quick summary of what coal fly ash is, because this is the component of the toxic mess, the sludge that was spilled in 2008. When coal formed millions of years ago, it trapped particles of dust in it, and it's just that's a common component of coal. Now, when the electric utilities burn coal for heat, to drive turbines to produce electricity, the carbon part of the coal burns, but there's ash, and some of that ash is heavy and it settles out, and that needs to be disposed of. But the worst kind of ash is the ash that is what's called the light ash, or the fly ash. Fly because it flies up the smokestack, and that's full of toxic elements, and they condense in the hot gases above the furnace in a way that's not natural. I mean, the rock that we know and associate with in the world usually forms slowly, or its parent material forms slowly, and the various elements come to react with one another and become a relatively safe material. With the fly ash, the condensation is very rapid above the hot furnace, and the components, the elements, are not locked up tight with one another. So they're easily leached with water, for example, or they form on the surfaces of little fine particles. The toxins can form right at the surface. So it produces a dangerous product. How do we know it's dangerous? Because in Western nations, the environmental regulations require that it be trapped, usually by electrostatic precipitation, and then stored in some kind of a safe environment. And this is what happened in the case of the spill. It was stored on the surface in like a massive pond, but then the berms erupted and it flooded out into other areas. And so this was a mess. And it has the same toxic substances, and people worry that what will happen is the toxins will leach out and get into the water supply and poison people, give them cancer and birth defects and a whole host of other problems. So this story is about the efforts to clean up the spill. Not really the efforts to clean up, but the failings that took place that put at risk the workers who were charged with trying to clean this mess up. And this has some really valuable lessons for all of us.
Well, there was a TVA contractor from California that hired people to come in. They wore T-shirts, jeans, work boots. No one had a protective mask on, and according to one of the men quoted in the story, I think a mid-level supervisor, it was told that you really the reasoning was that you didn't have a mask is that it would look bad. It would be a public relations disaster for TVA to be saying on one hand that coal flash is harmless if controlled, and yet have men involved in the cleanup who are suited up. There's a photograph, Dr. Herndon, of one of the workers standing in front of a rental truck, a water truck, and his face is completely dark as if he were a coal miner, except the rings around his eyes where he had goggles on. So his nostrils absorbed a great deal of this ash, in micron-sized ash, but his eyes were protected at least prior to that snapping of that shot.
Well, this is a terrible instance, and you know that what was driving this was, as you say, to prevent the public deception that this stuff was really bad. That's terrible and toxic, and there's a great deal of disinformation, both about this and the aerial spraying of the coal fly ash that we all breathe. And it becomes truly corrupted, a corrupt world when people are being deceived related to the health effects. And that's what was happening here. And the article also says that they made sure that the sensors that were put there to detect dust were always kept clean, so they wouldn't send out false signals real signals.
And they had the sensors.
There was a lot of dust blowing around.
And they had the sensors placed in areas that had been watered down by the water truck or hoses to keep the dust down. I guess that's why coal flash is so mobile, so airborne prone. Marvin Herndon in San Diego, that you have to have it wet all the time, or you have to keep it in mud form so that it won't take the flight. The story mentions that there were sometimes of this wasteland dust devils that rose up in the winds, and they were like plumes, dark plumes that would kind of dance across this coal flash wasteland in Tennessee, pointing out again pointing out the advantage of coal flash as a weather altering substance, because it is so light and so mobile, and since it does have reflective metals in it, it serves the national interest well, you could argue, when it's dispensed by the millions of tons in the troposphere and in the stratosphere. Would you not say, Dr. Herndon?
Well, I would say yes, but I'd also point out something else that is a major failing. Back in the 1950s, 1960s, and into the 70s, there were something on the order of 100 above-ground nuclear detonations in Nevada. Every time one of these atomic devices exploded, it would suck up the ground, the dirt from the ground, and make it radioactive, as well as the radioactive substances from the device itself, and bring it up into the air, and it would be caught by the prevailing winds and move from typically from Nevada across the U.S. and even on into Europe. And as rain or weather conditions caused some of this to fall to Earth, this was referred to as fallout. It was, of course, worse right near in the communities near in Nevada and in Utah. And people were deceived about the health risks. No one advised people how to protect themselves, or that this was a risk, and probably the same rationale. If people were told how terrible it was, they would object to the detonations, and that whole program would collapse. Well, eventually that happened because scientists discovered strontium-90 in milk that would get into the bones and the teeth of children, babies and children. And so the public outcry then led to the ending of the above ground nuclear testing. Well, this is the same sort of thing. You have this irresponsible handling of the coal fly ash that is being dumped. And you have a worse irresponsible handling, all in secret, covert, of spraying this material in the air that we breathe, in the region where clouds form. And you see these trails that are produced in the air, and these things come to Earth, they mix with the air we breathe, and we breathe it in. And it's terrible because the small grain size means that when you get it in your lungs, it gets buried deep in terminal airways and alveoli, and it just sits there. It sits there while the radioactive elements in it decay, and radioactive material decaying can cause cancer. It sits there while the body moisture is extracting other cancer-causing chemicals such as hexavalent chromium and arsenic, and not only exposing the lungs but also other parts of the body to these substances. So you're getting exposed both from the kind of poor practice sequestering of the coal fly ash, such as in the instance of this big spill that happened, and you're getting exposed through the deliberate and covert spraying of the toxic coal fly ash into the air we all breathe, and that includes children, pregnant women, the elderly. I mean, the people who are most affected by this are the very young, the very old, and those people who have infirmaries, such as asthma, for example, or other breathing difficulties. So there's a commonality, and it's the one good thing about this present article that we're talking about is that a number of workers are suing the company that got the contract to clean this mess up. And so they're not directly trying to sue the government. And hopefully, we'd like to think that the attorneys involved would understand what's happening on a broader scale, because I think that in the future there could be serious litigation if it can be demonstrated that the utilities are secretly providing coal fly ash for the government to use and the military to use in its aerial spraying. Then an incredible class action suit could be filed against the utilities.
Well, the utilities, Dr. Herndon, do sell almost half of their coal fly ash. It's used in everything from bricks to particle board to many decorative things. It's in toothpaste. It's in many areas. Many products that are personal products, health products, and also manufacturing products. And in roadways, it's used as a strengthener for concrete. I think the figure is about 47% of coal fly ash is purchased. Now, if the federal government bought coal fly ash from TVA, it would probably be through shell companies or middlemen and not directly. So TVA would be able to declaim and deny any kind of liability for its waste product being sprayed by the government. Of course, in secret. It's a secret program under the doctrines of military necessity and national security.
I think if you had a well-funded legal team, they could monitor the transport of material from the coal utilities to the military bases and obtain the evidence in that way. I mean, surely they're not going to announce what they're doing, but they have to get the material from the coal ash processing plant to the places of distribution to the military.
Right. There's
one thing that's of interest. Coal fly ash is thought by many people to be a toxic waste product, which it truly is. But in 2014, early in the year, the EPA issued a final ruling and declared coal fly ash not a toxic waste, but solid waste, which means it could be dumped in a landfill. Well, I suspect the reason was because how are they going to declare something toxic waste that other parts of the government are authorizing to be sprayed into the air we breathe?
And just quickly, let me just mention, Dr. Herndon, this story points out something that's really remarkable. There's a little scene in Jamie Satterfield's report in the Knoxville Sentinel about a truck where the man said he closed the doors and windows of his truck and left, but when he came back, the dashboard was glittering with tiny sparkles, which are aerials suspended in the air fly ash particles that landed and caught the sun, because they're metals in the coal fly ash. Again, that serves. Just let me ask you: then does the fact that there are metal content, including chromium and mercury and nickel, in coal fly ash, doesn't that make it an ideal material to spray? Because the particles are light, they stay airborne, and they reflect sunlight, which is part of the goal of solar radiation management theory. Well, they may not be all metals in the sense of you use the word metals, but they may be metallic elements combined with other things. But it's ideal in the sense that it's a fine, very fine powder that comes already prepared. Whereas if you took a rock and tried to crush it, I mean, it would take huge amounts of energy, heavy equipment. It's a big operation. Right. Using coal fly ash, Dr. Herndon in San Diego, who runs nuclearplanet.com, you're saying that it's a ready-made product. It doesn't have to be manufactured or really probably even processed to be dispersed over the skies of Hamilton County and other parts of the country. And it's cheap. I mean, it's a waste product, so it's cheap, and it's available. It's I think either the first or the second largest waste stream in the world, and it's available throughout the world. So I mean, this is an ideal substance, but let me explain why it's not an ideal substance. I mean, other than it poisons you. You have half a minute. If you look at the literature on solar radiation management, the so-called Welsbach patent, what they talk about is a material that reflects
radiation in the visible range, but it transmits, in other words, infrared, which is heat. It transmits that through it. Well, that's a very unusual condition for a material, and certainly coal fly ash doesn't fall into that. Now, the reason they like the idea and the patent of a material that transmits the infrared is because the Earth receives light from the sun, and it has to, the energy that it receives, it has to radiate back into space.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Dr. Marvin Herndon. I do thank you for joining us. David Tulis.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM.
Now, me being a radio guy, I'm really not good with vehicles. Never changed my own oil, can barely change a tire, and sometimes when I hear a clanking, I just turn the radio up louder. Not a real good idea. So I need to be able to trust someone when they look at my vehicle. Well, I found the guys, locally owned and operated here in Chattanooga. It's Precision Tune Auto Care. They're your neighbors. There's 3 locations in Chattanooga. And since they're Nooga Radio's official oil change center, they're going to extend the great deal they give to us to you. Just $20 for a standard oil change. Can you imagine that? $20 for a standard oil change. You're in and out in no time. $20 for a standard oil change at Precision Tune Auto Care. And they treat all of their customers like family. With show and tell, they'll show you what's wrong, point out the problems, and tell you exactly what it will take to get fixed. They really do have pride in what they do at Precision Tune Auto Care. Precision Tune Auto Care with 3 locations: 2125 Gun Barrel Road, Chattanooga, 4221 Hickson Pike, and Highway 58 next to Dunkin' Donuts. Call 602-5955. That's 602-5955. Precision Tune Auto Care.